Okay, hey guys, it's Ivy here, and I want to talk to you today about polyvagal theory, one of my most favorite theories. It's relatively new-ish. It's conceptualized by Stephen Porges, and if you want more information about it, you can go do an internet search for polyvagal theory and Stephen Porges, and a lot of information is going to come up. It's very science-heavy. And I don't want to give you the science part today. I want to give you the part that's the human part that's going to be relevant to you and relevant to your mental health. Okay, so here we go. Polyvagal theory is this idea that we have a three-tiered layered nervous system. The oldest layer, which is at the very bottom, is often referred to as the reptilian layer. I had someone the other day refer to it as my lizard brain. Yes, it's your lizard brain. And it's responsible for connecting into your nervous system, everything kind of like more or less below your belly button, right? Okay, so like your lower digestive system, your reproduction system, everything that's happening down in that part of your body. And it's designed to be very binary. And what I mean by that is it's either kind of like an on or an off. And so in the reptilian world, this would translate into you're either going out into the world and looking for food, or you're resting. You're either hanging out with your reptilian friends thinking about reproducing, or you're resting. You're either looking for a sunny spot to lay in, or you're resting in the sunny spot. It's really just doing a thing or not doing a thing. It's very simple. It's often referred to in the polyvagal world as where the state of conservation of energy is. So like if you're really tired, we often drop down at this part of our nervous system. It's often referred to as the place where we become immobilized. Think depression. The next highest system up is our fight or flight system, also known as like our mammalian system. And the purpose of this system is to connect to our hearts, our lungs, our upper stomach, upper digestive parts. And what it's designed to do is take in information from our environment on a below conscious level of awareness, which is often referred to as neuroception. So, right, we get neuroception activated. There's a potential threat in our environment. Our heart and our lungs kick in. And then we have that, oh, I want to run into the fire or I want to run out of the fire feeling, right? That fight or flight stuff. What I think is really important to know about neuroception in regard to fight or flight is it happens truly below our conscious awareness, which is a really good thing when you think about it, because you don't want to get this information from your environment that something's not safe. And then you have to sit back and logically think about whether it's safe or not. I mean, no, you just want to get out of the fire or run into the fire to save people, whichever type you are. I don't care. Okay, and above that layer of our nervous system is what's often referred to as our social engagement system, and that's connects into this part of our body. So our heads, our faces, our ears, our mouths, our throat, back of the neck, our hands. I think that's because we communicate with our hands a lot. And also when you think about growing, developing babies who are getting their nervous systems really online and really wired in, we're really cradling them and like mirroring their facial expressions and touching them. And it's a really important part of how humans socially engage with each other. Okay, so here's what happens. Most of us stay in social engagement most of the time, which means we're thinking about being in the world, we're thinking about being a human with other humans, we're engaging with other humans, we're kind of just doing our thing. When a threat pops into our environment, our first line of defense is to use social engagement to kind of like look around and see what other people are doing. Maybe say, wow, did you hear that sound in the bushes? I don't know if things are safe. And to get feedback from other people about like, yes, we're safe. Oh, I think there might be a problem, or I think maybe you're not okay and I can help you. And so there's this social interchange that happens up here in social engagement. So what happens with trauma is a lot of times human beings are in like really big, really overwhelming situations and they are alone. This is, like the basic ingredients of trauma. Big, bad, overwhelming situation, and you feel like you're alone. Which is not to say you're not with other people. You may be in a crowd of people, but if these aren't people that you're socially engaging with, according to your nervous system, you might as well be alone. Okay, so trauma happens, something big happens, and you have this perception that you're alone. Your social engagement system is like, well, this isn't enough. I think we need to go down a level. We go down into fight or flight. Fight or flight, we're like, oh my gosh, get me out of this fire, or I want to go run into this fire and help other people. Again, that happens without any of our conscious awareness. Sometimes we're in situations, though, where we can't fight or flight. And as a matter of survival, and in order to sustain our energy and try and keep us alive, our nervous system drops down into this conservation, immobilized, lower dorsal vagal part of our nervous system, also known as the freeze response. Okay, so anytime you guys are having any kind of freeze response, you've dropped all the way down into that lower level of your nervous system. Anytime you're having an activated fight or flight response, you're in the midsection. Otherwise, most of us hang out in social engagement most of the time. Okay, so I want to talk about a few things from a mental health perspective and how they apply to polyvagal theory. And the first is anxiety. Okay, so let's talk about what that is. Well, anxiety is a prolonged experience of being in fight or flight. Your sympathetic nervous system is activated over and over and over and over again. Those of us who have any kind of developmental trauma, complex PTSD, this happens a lot because our perception of danger in our environment is often triggered and we're not even realizing it's happening due to our old conditioned attachment patterns, which I'll talk more about in another video. Needless to say, even when your environment is actually safe, a lot of us with trauma just have this constant feeling of like, I'm not okay and I'm not safe. And then we're in this like midsection of our nervous system trying to figure out where the threat is, where it's coming from, and what to do about it. And a lot of times, because it's happening on this neuroception below our conscious awareness level, we really don't know. We really don't know why we're anxious. And that's where things like generalized anxiety come in. You just feel anxious. You don't know why. And that makes sense from this polyvagal perspective. If you stay in this like agitated, anxious state for a long enough period of time, your nervous system gets kind of burnt out and sort of exhausted. And that's when we drop into this resting state of immobilized conservation of energy way of being in the world, right? Which looks a lot like depression. This isn't depression for all people. I'm not saying this is the answer to every single depression that's out there, but if you have trauma and you also experience symptoms of depression, this is probably what's happening. So when we get into these depressed modes, it's really our body's way of telling us, you need to rest. This is too much. We actually need to lay in bed and Netflix and chill. So when you're beating up on yourself and you're passing judgment over yourself about like, why can't I just find the energy to like get out of bed? What's wrong with me? All I want to do is sleep. There's nothing wrong with you. Actually, your body and your nervous system is functioning magnificently. It's telling you you're overwhelmed. It can't keep up with the level of energy needed to sustain fight or flight anymore. And you need to rest. You need to switch into this very binary system of like, eat and sleep. Do a thing and sleep. What I often see with people who come in for therapy, mental health, they have a combination of both of these things. And here's why. A lot of people, they're moving out of a conservation state. They're feeling okay. They've rested sufficiently enough to feel like they can start doing things again. So they start doing things, but getting more anxious. They're out in the world more, but they're getting more anxious. And pretty soon their anxiety grows and grows and grows and grows until they reach this apex again where they just can't do it anymore. You're exhausted, your body's overwhelmed. And then you have this crash. And this crash looks like and feels like depression. And it's because you've fallen down into this immobilized part of your nervous system where you really do genuinely just need to rest. So when you're feeling depressed, when you're feeling like you can't get it together, rest, please take care of yourself, which does not mean like Facebook scrolling. It does not mean doing things like watching scary movies. Like you don't want your nervous system activated when you're in conservation mode. And a lot of people do like active resting, and social media is like the worst. It's the first thing that comes to mind, right? Where you're scrolling, you think you're resting, but then you're seeing all these things, news articles, people's comment, people fighting. It's triggering your nervous system again, and so you're never actually resting. So if you feel like you are really down in the dumps and you are not getting it together, please, like, really rest. Think about what that means for you. Okay, so a couple of things to think about with polyvagal theory. The first is, in order to get back up to social engagement, which is where most of us prefer to be most of the time, we have to move up through the system. So if you are experiencing this conservation, immobilized, like depressive-like state, please know when you move out of it, you're going to move into agitation, anxiety, anger, frustration, activation. It's what needed to happen in the first place, right? And so when you're in this state, remember, don't stop there, keep going. Go up the ladder another rung into social engagement. What do I mean by that? When you're feeling anxious, agitated, angry, overwhelmed, out of control, overstimulated, think about how to use your social engagement system. Call a friend, call a family member, go out and be with people. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be actively doing things with people. You could be sitting on the couch next to your best friend watching something, but there's some energetic connection, relationship happening between the two of you. If you can actually call someone and talk to them about what you're feeling, so that all of this perception of trauma and all the fear and the anxiety and the fight or flight and the worry can move through and you can get the help that you needed to get in the first place, it's really going to move all of this stuff energetically through your nervous system and out. And then you don't like keep it in your backpack anymore, and it doesn't weigh you down, and it doesn't pop up again and again and again. One problem that I run into all the time with people who have trauma is, and this is especially the case for complex trauma or developmental trauma that happened when you were a little kid, when you needed to access your social engagement system because you weren't feeling safe, sometimes your social engagement system was the thing that wasn't making you feel very safe. And so there's this tendency for people with developmental trauma to come into fight or flight, have the instinct that they want to reach out to people and connect with people, and yet part of them just cannot trust that it's safe. They cannot trust that people are okay. They cannot trust that they're good enough, deserving enough, worthy enough, lovable enough to actually access the social engagement system. And so then they kind of like hover in this fight or flight social engagement zone, and then their body kind of blows out again, and then they hit back down into conservation. And so if you are experiencing anxiety, anger, fight or flight, irritability, please think about accessing your social engagement system. I know we have these built-in beliefs from our attachment patterns from our childhood that we may not be good enough, safe enough, or lovable enough to actually get the support and care that we need. That's old stuff. I know it's hard to remember that. So by going to therapy and talking about that, hashing it out, and organizing it's really helpful, because at the end of the day, what we need to do with this polyvagal system is to stay up here as much as we possibly can and trust ourselves and trust other human beings as much as we can. And I know that's really hard. Okay, so that's the quick down low and dirty about polyvagal theory and why it's important to know if you have trauma, anxiety, or depression. If you want more information, again, it's all over the internet. Stephen Porges is the guy that kind of conceptualized it, brought it together, brought it into fruition, got it making sense. And yeah, I hope this is helpful for you guys and it reaches the right people. Okay, I hope everybody has a fantastic day and more to come later.